The late 80s and early 90s were the heyday of the erotic thriller, a genre that has been all but extinguished from the multiplexes today. You'd see tough guys matching wits with femme fatales, steamy sex scenes, car chases, and bloody violence, usually performed by A-listers and top-tier directors. What a time to be alive.
What am I supposed to do? You won't answer my calls, you changed your number. I mean, I'm not gonna be ignored, Dan.
If the king of the genre is Fatal Attraction, the naughty queen would have to be Basic Instinct, Paul Verhoeven's scandalous, controversial, very expensive psychosexual thriller about a damaged cop pursuing a cunning mystery novelist who also just might be an ice-cold killer. The film was a headline maker from its very announcement, with tons of money being thrown at the movie that would later be accused of being homophobic, misogynistic, and just plain overhyped. Whatever your opinion on it, you can't deny that it made an impression in ways modern movies don't often do. So stab some ice and put it in a glass with your favorite poison.
You have something against ice cubes?
Because we're gonna tell you what the happened to this movie. The story of Basic Instinct begins with its writer, Joe Esterhaus. At the time, he was one of the most successful screenwriters in Hollywood, known for writing provocative films like Flashdance, Jagged Edge, and Betrayed. Esterhaus had written 3 movies in a row where his male lead had emotionally manipulated the woman who loved him. So the writer wanted to flip that dynamic, to write a thriller where an evil woman controlled a man effortlessly through mind games and sex. He was fascinated and frightened by notions of thrill killings and homicidal impulses, and delved into writing the thriller, a combination of film noir and detective mystery. 3 weeks later, he was done, a script he called Love Hurts, until changing the title to Basic Instinct the day he sent it to his agent.
What's your new book about?
A detective. He falls for the wrong woman.
His agent was knocked out by it, and soon enough they were holding an auction for every major studio in Hollywood. When the smoke cleared, the script was purchased by Carolco Pictures for a record $3 million, which bested the previous screenplay sale record holder, Shane Black's The Last Boy Scout, by over $1 million.
You still want the job?
$500 is $500, Mike.
Carolco was known for big-budget action pictures like the Rambo films and Total Recall, and though they were having some financial difficulties at the time thanks to overspending on talent, the principals at the company felt Basic Instinct was a surefire hit. Another $1 million went to Esterhaus's preferred producer, Irwin Winkler, the legendary producer behind hits like Rocky, Raging Bull, and Goodfellas. Together, they were going to court Oscar-winning Milos Forman. But Carolco went over their heads and signed Paul Verhoeven, the intense Dutch director with whom they just collaborated on Total Recall.
First, let's get rid of that bug in your head. Take this thing out of the case and stick it up your nose. Don't worry, it's self-guiding.
In addition, they signed Michael Douglas to star as Detective Nick Curran, without consulting Esterhaus or Winkler. Douglas got a $15 million paycheck, the most for an actor in Hollywood history at the time.
I told you I quit.
It won't last.
Resigned to their new collaborators, Esterhaus and Winkler met with Verhoeven and Douglas to discuss the project, and it immediately became clear to the writer that neither the new director or star particularly liked that script. Verhoeven wanted to know what it was about, really about, and was not satisfied with Esterhaus's response that it was about psychological and sexual manipulation.
Exactly what did you have in mind, Mr. Corelli?
For his part, Douglas seemed particularly concerned, even preoccupied with the question of redemption. Does his character find redemption after all the sordid business he's been a part of? During an early meeting with Esterhaus, Douglas kept bringing up, what is the redemption here? You can't do a picture where evil triumphs at the end.
So where's this going?
Esterhaus later claimed Douglas wanted the movie to end with Nick shooting and killing Catherine, thus delivering some kind of redemption.
Well, why is it you got your head so far up your own ass?
You want to play? Fine. I can play.
Verhoeven had listed a series of changes he wanted to make to the script, suggestions Esterhaus was not on board with. One of his main ideas was that the film should be sexually explicit, whereas Esterhaus had viewed the film as more subtle, filled with mystery and sexiness, but nowhere near the softcore porn Verhoeven was describing, filled with full frontal nudity. The meeting ended badly, with writer and director yelling at each other, culminating in Verhoeven storming out of Winkler's house, with the producer calling him a Nazi as he left. Obviously not a great start. Esterhaus refused to make the changes Verhoeven wanted. Despite the huge payday he received, he felt it was his duty as a writer to stand up for his work. The only thing he and Winkler could do was withdraw from the project, hope Carolco would give it back to them, and then they could start anew. But of course the studio was adamant that it was their property now and refused. Esterhaus issued a public statement that basically said he could not work with Verhoeven and that he fundamentally disagreed with the director's vision for the project. Carolco considered suing Esterhaus for publicly injuring the film's reputation before it even went before cameras. Basic Instinct was becoming notorious within the industry before anyone even knew what it was about.
Stop writing me, man! I'll kick your teeth in!
What's the problem?
Verhoeven went off with Gary Goldman, whom he'd worked with on Total Recall, to come up with a draft that more accurately reflected the director's lurid vision of the film. But after doing a few drafts, they realized Esterhaus's original script was the right one after all.
Son of a bitch!
Verhoeven sent Esterhaus a copy of the final shooting script, and the writer was shocked to find it was his original version, word for word. The director, never known for humility, admitted to Esterhaus that he was wrong, that the script he'd signed to do was genius, and the two made public amends. Unfortunately for Winkler, he was not welcome back, as Verhoeven wanted to use his own producer, Alan Marshall.
Don't worry. I'm not gonna do what you all think I'm gonna do, which is just flip out!
Now the time came to cast the female lead of the film, Catherine Tramell, a sly, remorseless killer who writes books about the people she murders. Naturally, the script went out to some of the biggest names in town: Michelle Pfeiffer, Kim Basinger, Gina Davis, Ellen Barkin, and Julia Roberts, just to name a few. They all turned it down, apparently put off by the steamy material, and perhaps Verhoeven himself. The actress who wanted it more than anyone was Sharon Stone, who'd made a series of forgettable B-movies in the 80s before standing out as Arnold Schwarzenegger's duplicitous wife in Verhoeven's Total Recall.
Sweetheart, be reasonable. After all, we're married.
Consider that a divorce.
Stone auditioned for the part several times, and while Verhoeven thought she was right for the part, the studio was hesitant to cast a virtual unknown in the crucial role of the villain. Michael Douglas was unsure as well. He felt that he needed a name as big as his to share the risks of the film, otherwise it would all fall on him. Eventually, they gave in, giving Stone the part that would make her a star.
There's no smoking during the monologue.
What are you gonna do, Davy? Take me off the air? We're live.
About her, Verhoeven once said, "Sharon is evil," maybe only half jokingly. One main condition Verhoeven had for Stone: she had to do everything he asked of her. She agreed, and production was set to commence in San Francisco.
Rough day?
Not really.
Beating that machine can't be easy.
If I was guilty and I wanted to beat that machine, it wouldn't be hard.
But if the film seemed like it was finally ready to get going with controversy in its past, it had another thing coming. The script got out and caused some ripples in San Francisco's gay community, especially after gossip columnist Liz Smith wrote a column saying Basic Instinct was about, quote, ice pick wielding lesbians. Not ideal, obviously. A group of prominent gay community leaders wanted to have a sit-down with Verhoeven and the writer in order to put to rest their fears that the film was going to be anti-gay. To his credit, Esterhaus had no problem with the idea. He knew he didn't write a film about an evil lesbian, as Catherine was bisexual, and as he saw it, she was turned on by mind games and seduction, not sex. Verhoeven, however, was initially unwilling to meet with the community, thinking they were trying to censor him and stifle his creativity. After some back and forth, the director agreed to meet with them to allay any worries. Of course, Verhoeven's style is not what most people would consider delicate. and he quickly made it clear to a room full of concerned gay people that he was not going to alter a word of the script. Esterhaus was more understanding, said he would look at the script and make it even clearer that Basic Instinct would in no way be an attack on the community. The meeting basically ended in a stalemate, with the rare occurrence of a director vowing not to change one iota of the screenplay, even while the writer was open to tinkering. With production about to commence, it became obvious that Basic Instinct would be getting lots of unwanted publicity in the Bay Area from protesters. And protests they did in exceedingly intrusive ways. They blew whistles and flashed lights in the cameras. They chanted loudly and did anything they could to hold up production. Some of them held up signs encouraging passing cars to honk if they loved the 49ers, which of course prompted native San Franciscans to joyously make noise for their beloved team. The facade of a bar where a scene was being shot was doused with paint, stopping the day's work in its tracks. Verhoeven's producer Alan Marshall took to performing citizens' arrests and hauling out protesters single-handedly, which made him the very unpopular face of the production and the target of most of their ire. The production released an official statement that read, "Censorship by street action will not be tolerated."
This is your statement? You signed your name to this crock of shit?
Why not? It was an accident.
But protesters weren't the only ones bringing the heat. Conflicts on set between Douglas and Stone were apparently a regular occurrence. Douglas, it seemed, didn't like the fact that Stone's character was constantly outwitting and manipulating his character, and he would change the dialogue to make Nick seem less weak compared to Catherine. "She one-ups me every time," was Douglas's complaint. One particularly fraught occasion saw Douglas refusing to walk over to Catherine, the actor instead insisting she come to him. Stone, of course, thought Catherine should be dictating their relationship at all times, not willing to give an inch. A frustrated Verhoeven agreed to shoot it both ways after hours of childish debate, and probably to no one's surprise, Verhoeven also had his share of conflicts with the actors. In Esterhaus's book, Hollywood Animal, the writer recaps a brief incident where Verhoeven had to go to the hospital with a very bad nosebleed. Esterhaus's spies on set alleged Michael Douglas punched the director, although Paul would deny it, saying he was prone to nosebleeds. And tension was bubbling between Verhoeven and his lead actress as well. In an April 1992 interview that took place right after the film came out, Verhoeven refers to Stone as difficult, albeit likably difficult. He also said it was a love-hate relationship between he and Stone, to which Stone retorted, "Yeah, he loves me, I hate him." In the same article, Douglas referred to whatever was going on between Verhoeven and Stone as a strange soap opera and called Verhoeven a wacko Dutchman.
"There are only two things I can't stand in this world. People who are intolerant of other people's cultures and the Dutch."
What?
Obviously, all this tension on set would make the movie's notorious sex scenes rather interesting to film. During the first intimate sequence between Nick and Catherine, no stunt or sex doubles were used, and the shooting took 5 steamy days to complete, with Verhoeven meticulously mapping out every shot and body movement. Because the act looked so passionate in the final product, Douglas felt compelled to tell Entertainment Weekly that he swore on the Bible and his son's life that he and Stone were never actually intimate. Then there's the film's most infamous scene. You know the one.
"I'm telling you, I could never have shut buttons."
This is your last warning about that.
Catherine is in a room filled with cops and lawyers and coolly and effortlessly plays them for fools, simultaneously arousing and confounding them.
You never tied him up.
No. Johnny liked to use his hands too much. I like hands and fingers.
One crucial moment sees her uncross and cross her legs, giving Wayne Knight and the entire world a peek under her dress, a 2-second glimpse that would set the world on fire. For the record, this was not in Esterhaus's script. It was all Verhoeven. Not surprising. There are really only 2 versions of how this moment came to pass: Verhoeven's and Stone's. The actress claims she was completely blindsided by the revealing shot the first time she saw it on the big screen. Stone claims Verhoeven asked her to take off her white underwear because they were reflecting the light, and the camera could only catch a vague hint of her crotch. After seeing the scene in all of its glory at the screening, Stone went over to the projection booth where Verhoeven was watching, slapped him in the face, and left. Verhoeven has always claimed that Stone knew exactly what was happening, saying in an interview any actress would know what we'd be seeing considering where the camera was placed. He felt that only after Stone saw the scene surrounded by agents and publicists was she outraged, forcing her to ask him to remove the shot, which of course he would not do. In her autobiography, Stone said she ultimately chose not to pursue legal action because she knew the shot was correct for the movie and the character, but noted that while there are many points of view as to what exactly happened in that notorious glimpse, the other points of view are bullshit, as she is, quote, the one with the vagina. In a sad twist, Stone later revealed that the scene cost her custody of her child. The actress described the judge asking her son if he knew his mother made sex movies, apparently landing on the conclusion that she was unfit to act as his mother after showing her privates in the film. If indeed true, this lends an entirely new and regrettable dimension to the he said, she said debate between actress and director.
Which one are we talking about now, Hoss? We know old Hazel did it. We know young Roxy did it. And the other one? Well, hell, she got that magna cum laude on her that done fried up your brain.
Strangely enough, the startling reveal would not be a problem for the MPAA, but they certainly had problems with several other shots in the film, not just of the sexual variety, but moments of bloody violence as well. Verhoeven had to re-edit the film approximately 8 times before getting an R, losing about 40 seconds of film in the process.
I'm a big girl. I can handle it.
Those 40 seconds were eventually added to the director's cut. With the film in releasable shape, it was time to show the world what all the fuss was about. Unsurprisingly, the protests started up right away. Outside of theaters, one could hear frustrated members of the gay community shout, "Catherine did it," which they hoped would spoil the identity of the film, thus eliminating interest. This tactic did not work. Basic Instinct made $15 million during its opening weekend, a very nice sum back in those days, and went on to gross 117 domestic and almost 400 million worldwide. While critics were lukewarm on the film, there was no denying that it benefited from the endless publicity and controversy. It was just a movie you had to go see, and Sharon Stone became an immediate sensation. All those years of trying for a big break finally paid off, although maybe not in the exact fashion she had hoped.
What are you doing? Checking up on me? For what?
For his part, Esterhaus wasn't even invited to the premiere. So mad at him were Verhoeven and the producers for his willingness to compromise for the gay community. He had to buy his own ticket opening night.
You have to be accompanied by a parent or guardian.
But why?
Because this movie has naughty language. Next, please.
This can't be happening. We have to see this movie, dude. Ah, screw it. It probably isn't all that good anyway.
He ended up liking the end result, however, and agreed that it wasn't malicious or offensive to any one group, and sent Verhoeven a case of champagne as a peace offering. A couple years later, the two would get together for another movie revolving around sex and seduction, Showgirls, which was, let's say, not nearly as successful as Basic Instinct.
Must be weird not having anybody on you.
Finally, there was a Basic Instinct sequel released 14 years later, a movie neither successful nor relevant. It's only notable for some of the behind-the-scenes drama that occurred before and during production, which should come as no surprise. After all, Catherine seems to cause trouble everywhere she goes.
You shouldn't play this game.
Why not? I like it.
You're in over your head.
Maybe. But this is how I'll catch my killer.